Redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Hey, welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Guys, we have a fabulous guest with us today. His name is J. Christian Adams. He is the president and general counsel of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. You guys may remember him back in the day during the Obama administration. Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were a part of the DOJ. There was some voter intimidation going on with some Black Panthers. You stood up to the Obama administration and you made some noise, and you were, quite frankly, in my opinion, a hero for doing so and bringing this voter intimidation going on by people that either by the Obama administration or people linked to it. So I appreciate you doing that. Let me just say that from the onset.
Well, thanks. I started the Eric Holder fan club, and
that's
right, as the founding member. And no, that you're right. It's 2008 election. It seems like it wasn't that long ago.
Wow,
but,
man!
Black Panthers. We brought a case at DOJ. They dismissed the case, even though the Panthers didn't respond to the case. So. Man, that was a long time ago now, but you're exactly right. It was sort of the opening salvo of, in my view, of this transformation of the law into a tool of political weaponry.
That is a great. You know what? I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I wanted to at least make mention of it, but you do see that as the point of which our DOJ or law in general began to be weaponized.
Well, don't forget, the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department is the nesting ground for all the most radical worldviews, the biggest leftists, the most race-obsessed people. They go to the Civil Rights Division, not the Criminal Division, not the Environmental Division, not the Antitrust Division.
That's a great
point.
So
I was working with these people. So you get to see what's down the road ahead of the rest of the country. And, you know, I encountered, as I wrote in my book, Injustice, which still seems to sell, about how the law was being used to advance radical ideological ends inside the division. And I saw this in 2005, 2006, 2008. And nowhere else was this taking place in America, right? I mean, and then the Black Panther case is a great encapsulation. You break the law, it's who you are, not what you do, which is a Marxist concept. And they gave a pass to clearly civil rights violating new Black Panthers because they were new Black Panthers.
Unbelievable. I mean, I'm so glad that I'm so glad that we talked about this. I didn't even intend to go there, but that is a fascinating point. And honestly, I'm just glad that we did speak of it. Again, I'm speaking to J. Christian Adams. He is the president and general counsel of the Public Interest Legal Foundation, and we'll give you more info on that as well. He is also the author of the New York Times bestseller, Injustice: Exposing the Racial Agenda of the Obama Justice Department. You guys heard of what we just spoke about. So that's man, that's just so fascinating. I'm already fascinated with you, Jay, and we haven't even gotten started on the reason why you're on. Before we do get to that, I do want to encourage you guys to please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. We're on Apple, Google, Spotify. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Carl Jackson Show. We're also on Rumble. Please rate and review. Give us a 5, please. That'll help us get this message out there. And obviously, you'll get the podcast and the video podcast free to your inbox. So please do that. And also, I feel like there's something else I need to say. Oh, it is. Support my sponsor, MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell, the fabulous company, MyPillow. Right now, Mike has a wonderful offer. Buy one, get one free of the new MyPillow 2.0. It has the same patented adjusted feel as the original MyPillow, but now it has this temperature regulating thread on the outside. Again, buy one, get one free. The pillow is now softer, smoother, and cooler, giving you an even better night's rest, if you can imagine that. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square at the top of the page, enter my name, Carl, that is C-A-R-L, or you can give them a call if you prefer, 800-858-0263, 800-858-0263, and use my name, Carl. All right. Again, we're speaking to J. Christian Adams. He serves as the president and general counsel of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. I actually spoke to Jay at least one time before on my my radio show, but we have him here on the podcast. And when I sit in for a national host, I'm going to have to get him on, because he is doing fabulous work when it comes to election integrity matters. And the reason why I have you on specifically today here, Jay, is because you wrote about the motor voter needs modernization now, is what you wrote in AM Greatness. So you say that we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the National Voter Registration Act, also known as Motor Voter. It's a federal mandate requiring state offices to offer voter registration. Jay, I feel like this issue is very pressing now, given our open borders and the open borders that are going to get even worse. Your response?
Well, we've been collecting data around the country from state election offices, Carl, where we're finding non-citizens, aliens, are getting on the voter rolls, and they're doing it through Motor Voter. Now, it's not supposed to work this way, but it's an imperfect system. And what happens is people go in to get a driver's license. They might be from Mexico, or, we have people in my neighborhood that are in a British embassy house that they spend 2 years detailed to the United States, and they go and they get driver's licenses to let them drive. Well, in the Motor Voter process, when you get a DMV driver's license, they ask you if you want to register to vote. And ideally, non-citizens don't get asked this question. But all there is, Carl, is a form that says, are you a U.S. citizen, yes or no? That is the entire gate that is keeping non-citizens from getting on the voter rolls, is a question, are you a U.S. citizen, yes or no? And what we're seeing is people are mistakenly marking no and still getting on the voter rolls. These are the worst ones. They actually tell the election office, hey, I'm from Uruguay. And then the election office says, welcome to the voter rolls. That's happening around the country. And I've got documentary proof to establish that. We also have the situation where people are just, you know what it's like. Click this form, do this task. These days, there's so many screens in front of you, and people are just flashing through.
Sure.
And they hit yes, and they get on the voter rolls, even if they're from Rwanda or Saudi Arabia or Japan. And this has caused a serious problem. Now, in places like California, you can imagine what's also going on. It's not just, the tech guy from India in the Valley or in the Bay Area. It's people in San Diego who have come here from Mexico that are getting on the voter rolls. And that's partially why California is what it is today, is because of a large
Such a good point. Such a good point. Jay, this you wrote about it this March, and I encourage you guys to read the article. It's on AM Greatness. Motor Voter Needs Modernization Now. I'm speaking to Jay Christian Adams. Make sure you support his organization, the Public Interest Legal Foundation. It's okay. We're coming up, or we have celebrated 30 years. This was during the Clinton administration, if my math is correct here. Why don't we just wipe this out, Jay? Why do we even keep it?
Well, because there's never going to be the votes to get rid of it. That's the bottom line. You're going to have, I believe, a filibuster-proof majority. You're going to have a hostile president. Frankly, there's good parts of this law.
Okay.
I mean, by and large, it's a bad law, but there's good parts to it, such as I am allowed under this law to go inspect election records. It's a public inspection right.
I get
It's better than state FOIA. People will talk to me about, we're going to FOIA records. Like, why are you using FOIA? I call that a Yugo, right? Compared to the Ferrari of this federal motor voter law to get public information. If you're using state FOIA law, you're not using all the tools you can use, because Motor Voter has a federal FOIA inside that doesn't, it's better than FOIA because you don't have to wait. You can just go inspect the records. It's public inspection. You can walk in and start touching things, right?
Wow. Okay.
FOIA doesn't do that.
Okay. That's very interesting. I didn't know that. That's very good to know. Foreigners are essentially invited to get on these voter rolls. You just mentioned some of the good things. I mean, that's a very good point. I had never heard that before. And so that is a good thing. And so you basically circumvent the FOIA and you can get your hands on public information. Are you concerned about this changing the demographics across the country here?
Yeah, that's the whole ball game. Is Motor Voter has opened up the gates to non-citizens getting on the rolls. It's also limited the ability to clean voter rolls. Let's suppose, Carl, that some dude lives next door to you. I don't know. Let's just call him Joe Jackson.
I think that's my dad's name. So, yeah, okay. That would be.
So let's step out. Joe Jackson. And he lives next door, and he moves to Oregon.
Okay.
And you know he's moved to Oregon.
Sure.
Well, under Motor Voter, he's going to stay on the voter rolls for like 6 or 7 years before he gets removed, unless Joe Jackson calls the election office and say, hey, I moved.
You are kidding me. There's no automatic trigger or no updating that person has to do?
No. In fact, there's throttles. There's hurdles you have to jump over that states have to jump over before they can ever remove Joe Jackson. And it takes time. You have to have 2 federal election cycles where Joe Jackson never makes a peep, right? Where he doesn't go to vote, where he doesn't do anything. And that's in the federal law. Now, the flip side of that is that Motor Voter has a provision that we're suing Michigan Secretary of State Benson over because she's not removing dead people. Okay. If you don't remove dead people, you're breaking federal law. So you see, there's subtleties here. Too often in this election space, people are all black and white, like, ooh, it's good or it's bad. And what I'm trying to get across in this is that Motor Voters is got good and it's got bad, and it's 30 years old. And so now's the time to take a look at what's good and take a look at what's bad.
Jay, listen, we have 22 states that are controlled where conservatives and or Republicans, whatever, have a trifecta. They have the governor's mansion, they have the state house, they have the state senate. Are these states contacting you about this specific issue and saying, Jay, Christian Adams, what can we do? What should we do about this to clean up our voter rolls? Please tell me yes.
Yeah, some are, some aren't. Some are hostile to it. There's a range, just like everything else.
Hostile to it.
Oh, yeah.
Please explain. Please explain that. Please explain that.
Well, look, Maine, the state of Maine. Let's start there. We asked Maine to look at their voter rolls. They said, no, you can't have them. It's against our law. So we sued Maine. We won a court order by a federal judge that Maine has to give us the voter rolls because they're public records under Motor Voter, by the way, right? It's not under state FOIA. And we won these same cases in Illinois and Maryland. But then Maine, the legislature passed a law and said, okay, you might get the records. We don't like you. But if you do anything with them, like talk about what they say, compare them to others. Oh, yeah. If you use them to help clean up the rolls, you're going to be penalized civilly with fines. So you want to talk about hostile, let's start with Maine. So a judge struck down that law as violating Motor Voter. You see subtleties here? Sometimes it's good.
Right, sure.
Well, guess what? Then Maine is now appealing to the federal appeals court. So we're not done yet.
What? This is okay. Now I'm getting a little upset here. What's the benefit for them to help destroy the country and undermine our federal laws? Like, seriously, what's the benefit? I don't even get it. I don't understand why they would be hostile against it.
It's more banal than that. Look, governments forever have always tried to hide their mistakes. That's what governments do.
Okay.
They don't talk about how they screw things up. That's why we're litigating in Michigan over 25,000 dead people in the active voter rolls. Governments don't like to admit they make mistakes. They don't like to give the records about their mistakes, which is a litigation we have in Pennsylvania involving foreigners voting. And so this is just run-of-the-mill stuff from a government that behaves like governments always do.
Again, I'm speaking to Jay Christian Adams, and he is the president and general counsel of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. What's the website to that, by the way? Jay, I want to make sure that I mention that over and over so people can go and help you out here.
Publicinterestlegal.org.
All right, publicinterestlegal.org.
I hope if anybody sees my name on this screen, I am not Croatian. That is actually not my name. I wrote it very quickly.
All right, okay. All right, we're talking about motor voter laws because obviously Title 42, it's meeting its end as of Thursday. We already have an open border. In my opinion, those numbers are going to get even worse. I'm looking at some of the headlines where literally you have about 150,000 people waiting to come into the United States already at the border. You have the Texas governor, Greg Abbott, that's sending out a special tactical team, if you will, to try to repel people from the border. I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but nonetheless, you already have millions of people in the last couple of years, just under the Biden administration, that have come into the United States. No doubt they're going to be traveling around, or they're going to live in different parts of the country. Unfortunately, drain a lot of resources. I actually feel bad for some of these people because they're not coming to experience the American dream. I really believe the left wants to keep them in poverty and so on, et cetera. That's, but anyway, they're going to get on these voter rolls. It eventually I believe is what's going to happen. We've got to be able to track these people. Jay, let me get your response to that. How concerned are you with all of the illegal immigration, the open borders, these people likely getting on to these voter rolls, and the changes that they'll be able to make around the country pretty quickly if they do?
Well, only Americans should be electing American officials. We shouldn't have foreign influence in the form of people getting on the voter rolls who aren't Americans. But that is what's happening, Carl. That is absolutely what's happening. Look, we've published report after report after report showing the documentary evidence of this. The non-citizens actually writing letters saying, please take me off the voter rolls because it's messing up my naturalization process. We're going to find more of this evidence. This is what, by the way, Motor Voter lets us get. We might not get this stuff without Motor Voter's public information clauses. But it is no doubt that it is happening, and it's making a difference in places like Pennsylvania, in California. Pennsylvania had between 11,000 and 100,000 aliens registered to vote in the last 20 years. That's their own admission, the minimum. So don't tell me it's not going to make a difference. Pennsylvania is actually hiding
close
from
elections,
especially closer tie elections, which Pennsylvania has a ton of. We have a tie election database at the Public Interest Legal Foundation. You can go to the website. Yeah, and so you forget about close elections. Let's talk about tie elections. We're up to, I think, about 600 in our database already.
Are you serious?
Yeah, tie elections, like coin flip decide elections.
That is fascinating. So, guys, the reason why I brought J. Christian Adams on is because there's a lot of things that we can be doing that we can bring to the attention of our elected officials. Sometimes, Jay, we just don't know what to talk about or what to say or what to be looking for. This is why I appreciate what you're doing at the Public Interest Legal Foundation, and this motor voter issue is a big deal. You mentioned something that I want to go back to, Jay, because some people are getting on these motor voter rolls, some foreign nationals. They don't want to be. You wrote about this in the column, but they don't want to admit they made a mistake because essentially good Lord, what's the word that I'm looking for? They committed a felony. So they don't want to go back and correct the record. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. And see, the only reason we're collecting as much evidence as we are about non-citizens on the rolls is because when they want to naturalize, when they want to become U.S. citizens,
right,
they have to go through a process. And question 12 on the naturalization form, question 12, says, have you ever registered to vote? Have you ever voted? So there's an incentive for them to tell the truth about that, because if they lie, they're not going to become an American citizen. You see how this works?
Yeah.
So what happens is they write letters, and I've seen them. I've held them in my hands. I've looked at them. They write letters saying, hey, I got registered to vote by mistake. I thought it was a student council election. That's a real excuse. You can go read our report at publicinterestlegal.org called Stealing the Vote. It's about Pittsburgh. Stealing. Get it? Okay. And we have the actual letters in the report where people are like, I thought this was student council. I thought I was allowed to register to vote. I was asked to DMV if I wanted to vote, which is motor voter. And so they get off the rolls through the naturalization process, and that's what allows us to harvest the evidence. Remember, evidence is important in this space.
Sure.
To harvest the evidence that this is happening.
Mm. Oh, man, this is fascinating. You wrote in the column, I want to speak about Arizona. In Maricopa County in Arizona, the motor voter is the biggest reason or culprit for putting illegal aliens on the voter rolls. Foreign nationals have asked to be removed, which we just spoke about. A total of 222 foreign nationals were removed from the county's voter registration. And it always, when I see those numbers, it always leads me to believe, Jay, there's more. There's more.
Well, obviously, there's lots more. And what these were more self-confessions, right?
Okay.
So if you were God and could know how many non-citizens are on the voter rolls, and that number is X, the number of self-confessions is always going to be less than X, right? It's always going to be a small fraction of what's actually out there. And in Maricopa, the big news there is we were able to see how they got on the voter rolls. There's a code in their records, and it might be a third-party registration drive. It might be walking in to register at the counter, or it might be motor voter. And guess what the top reason was that all these aliens got on the rolls was through motor voter DMV registration by a vast majority. The next highest, I think, was third-party registration drives. Like, just imagine like MALDEF or at some community event, they run around with a clipboard and say, please register to vote.
Right.
And so people are getting registered that way second most.
This is honestly, this is unbelievable. Do you think at the beginning or the inception of this, do you think this was the intention of the left?
I get asked this all the time, and there's a yes and no answer.
Okay.
There is genuinely, in my mind, in 1993, when this passed, was a desire to deal with a couple of issues of people being removed sort of willy-nilly from the rolls.
Okay.
They thought it would be easier to get people registered to vote. I will tell you, back then, they were convinced that if everybody voted, we would have a progressive utopia.
Right.
That the more people that voted, the more left-wing the policies would be. I'm completely the opposite point of view. I think if every single person in the United States voted, we would have more Donald Trumps than Barack Obamas.
Really?
I do.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Because we're a center-right country that still treasures what America is.
Okay.
And the pockets of dissent and rot are very isolated. They're very rare. Most Americans still love America. Most Americans still believe in freedom.
Sure.
But many of those Americans who believe in freedom and love America don't vote. And I think that it is, if we had every single American voting, and I'm not in favor of mandatory voting, don't get me wrong, but what I want to do is break up the dogma that the more people who vote, the more left-wing the policies get. I think it's exactly the opposite. I think that we're a center-right country. We should be in favor of voter registration. We should get everybody registered and voting because we will win more elections if we do.
You know what? That's honestly, I'm glad that you did that you mentioned that. I love for people to have hope. Obviously, we have to put action to that and make sure that we get out to vote. This year alone, I was reading the Federalist, a column that a gentleman had written there, where there's several special elections that are occurring in 2023. No one is talking about, and Republicans could win some crucial seats. It's absolutely fascinating. And one of the issues that he did speak about is the fact that so many or so few Republicans seem to be aware of these races or talk about these races, that the turnout is so extremely low that if Republicans would just pay attention to local and state races, we would be able to win the day. Democrats pay attention to some of these races and they will win by the thinnest of margins, or with, absolutely hardly anyone showing up to vote at all. So I think you probably do have a point there, Jay. So
let me give you two pieces of evidence to my theory. Number one is Georgia Senate.
Okay.
There is no way that the two senators from Georgia represent the views of the vast majority of Georgians.
Sure, right.
Okay?
Correct.
I know Georgia. And the fact that we have two nutcases in the Senate is a result of not enough Georgians voting. Okay? And the other, 2016, there's another example. The more people who vote, the more center-right the policies of the country will be.
Mm. That's a good point. That is a very good point. I sit here and I'm thinking, how could not just liberals, Jay, left-wing radicals, two senators, and white people chose not to show up and vote. I'm like, for God's sakes, your country.
There's some answers to that question, why they chose not to vote, but that's for another show.
All right. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. We talked about Pennsylvania here. Talk about Pennsylvania a little more. You said there's been, according to officials, due to a quote unquote glitch, they've been accidentally registering foreign nationals for 2 decades. They can't fix a glitch, quote unquote, here, Jay.
Yeah, not only are they not fixing it or not fixing it quickly, they're hiding all of the records. That's why we've been in litigation with them for years to get the records associated with the glitch problem and how bad it is and how many people voted. So this is an ongoing problem. Non-citizens getting on the rolls.
So how can we get involved? What do we need to do? The average citizen, we're talking about this issue of motor voter. J. Christian Adams, he's of the Public Interest Legal Foundation, president and general counsel. Help him out at publicinterestlegal.org. Is that correct, Jay?
Yes.
Publicinterestlegal.org. Publicinterestlegal.org. Guys, these are the fights that we're not always aware about. I'm convinced that as Americans, in order to save this country, to restore our Judeo-Christian values and our constitutional principles, we don't all have to build some major organization, but sometimes we just have to be aware of fights, and the fighters like J. Christian Adams, support them so that they can go out and do the work that they need to do. They can make us aware and then just kind of teach us how we can get involved and help them out. So how can we do that, Jay? Why is this important to the average citizen? How do we get involved? How do we bring attention to this, when it comes to our state legislators?
Well, a couple of points on that. First of all, we're winning cases,
okay.
Right? We had Delaware's vote by mail law struck down as unconstitutional. We're winning cases around that. What's that?
No, I said that's great.
Right. So we're winning cases. We're not losing them. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, I think the message to legislators needs to be that you need to do things to make the elections more secure, the good things, not sort of the wackadoodle stuff. That's important because when you sound to a legislator like, you just stepped off the spaceship, it causes problems.
Sure.
I mean, you got to just be very measured in this. So I think those are the two big things. Look, we're a charity, a nonprofit charity, tax deductible charity. So we're doing everything we can to fight the fight in an efficient and credible way.
I love that. Make sure you help them out. Publicinterestlegal.org, publicinterestlegal.org. Leading up to 2024 here, Jay, how crucial, scale from 1 to 10, do you think it is for people to get on top of this? Average citizens to make sure we're on top of this motor voter issue?
Yeah, the motor voter has got to be fixed. We're going to have problems embedded deeply into our elections unless we fix it. It doesn't take a lot, by the way. The number one fix is for Congress to allow states to validate citizenship. Right now, they can't. Right now, a state cannot have citizenship verification requirements when you register to vote. Can't do it. Now, they can look afterwards to try to find non-citizens, but they don't even have the tools to do that because there's no database of non-citizens that's very useful. So everything is in place now to cause havoc.
Oh man. All right. Jay, my blood is boiling a little bit, I have to admit here. But I'm happy to know the information. This is information. I'm all right. I'm dumbfounded. I am God's too honest. States cannot register their own citizens, essentially.
No, they can't validate non-citizens.
Yeah. Okay, that doesn't even make sense to me. Except this. Okay, now that you say that, it makes total sense to me that we would have planes flying in the middle of the night, distributing, if you will, illegal immigrants all across the country.
Yeah, I mean, look, the left is not stupid. They know how to build structures. A lot of people say, oh, there's voter fraud. You don't need voter fraud if you build the structures that write the rules.
God.
Oh, the machines did something. You don't need the machines.
Yeah.
If you build the environment where the election takes place.
We're focusing on the wrong things. We're focusing on the wrong things.
Well, some people are.
Good God. All right. Good stuff. Good stuff here. J. Christian Adams, publicinterestlegal.org. I got to go do something to blow off some steam.
Go, I don't know.
Oh, I'm going to go outside. I'm going to go outside and work a little bit. This is wow. This is eye-opening. Jay, listen, I certainly do appreciate you coming on. We got to have you back. I'm going to continue to follow you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I appreciate the strength and the courage that you showed during. I remember you being on the news at that time. You were getting a lot of heat. So I can't imagine what you've gone through, but I will say this. I really respect what you did. I respect what you do today. You're obviously a patriot. Dare I say that? I hope you won't get on the FBI's list for me saying that. But indeed, you are J. Christian Adams of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. I really do appreciate your work, man.
Thank you, Carl.
Absolutely. Jay, if you'll just stick with me, I'm going to close out the show here and we'll get it uploaded. Guys, again, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast with my guest, J. Christian Adams of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. Please support his organization, publicinterestlegal.org. As God is my witness, I'm going to go make a donation myself every once in a while. You just speak to someone, they're out doing the fighting. We can't be in every fight. We can't be in every fight. Wherever God has called you, he's called you. But sometimes people arise like J. Christian Adams, and they're fighting fights that they're just experts in. They're good at, and he's good at this. We can support those fighters because we can't be in every fight. So publicinterestlegal.org. Guys, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcasts, all right? Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. On YouTube, listen, let's just be honest. You're going to want to watch this one on Rumble. You're going to want to watch this on Rumble and subscribe to our Rumble channel, The Carl Jackson Show. Also subscribe to YouTube. It helps us to get the word out. It's absolutely free. I'm not going to come track you down. So please subscribe to those pages. It really does help. Follow us on social media. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Getter, True Social, Facebook, you name it. The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me on all things social media. Where can people find you on social media, Jay?
Well, at PILF Foundation, PILFOUNDATIN, PILF Foundation. Okay. Also, my own is at Election Law Center. I started tweeting in, I think, 10, where I didn't realize length was a problem. It should have been like at X, right?
All right.
At Election Law CTR.
At Election Law CTR. At Election Law CTR. Okay, I'm going to make sure I follow you at Election Law CTR. Guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.